Today we're talking about a brand that has all these accolades. You ready? They did something similar to the Basculant and the Reverso. They had the thinnest watch in the world. They had, instead of Paul Newman, they had a Finnish supermodel from the 1960s.
That's right.
And an evil version of her. They have the same bezel as a Speedmaster with the same movement as a Daytona.
Right.
This brand also has a watch designed by Gerald Genta, who designed the Nautilus and the Royal Oak. And if you're looking at these watches, the most famous ones don't even rival some of the prices of Rolexes.
What is up, watch fam? I am Christian, the curator of the Theo and Harris Watch Shop.
My name is Michael, and this video is sponsored by Hyper Fever. It is the best and most mobile game of all time. You can create the most incredible warriors to then fight in bubble pop, in solitaire, and all that amazing stuff, but I'm lying. This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. A completely free MMO/RPG that looks like the most in-depth mobile game that I have ever seen in my entire life. So if you like to get in-depth with watches and you like games, this seems like a good combination. So you're probably wondering, well, what exactly is Raid Shadow Legends? It's a good question. I'll be happy to answer it. Raid Shadow Legends is a game focused around battles and collecting champions to win said battles. There are literally 700 different champions that start off as little nymphs, not really, but you go to the portal and you get these champions and then you can upgrade them basically endlessly. There's over 1 billion combinations of things that you can do to make them stronger, faster, have cooler looking armor and features. And really what you're doing is you're building a clan out of these champions so then you can fight other clans and dominate the entire massive world. By the way, this April Raid is going on an egg hunt, but they're not just hunting for any normal eggs, they are hunting for dragon eggs. So with all this exciting stuff and more coming to Raid Shadow Legends, if you haven't started playing yet, then what are you waiting for? New players, you can use our link or scan the QR code and get a free starter pack with this cool in-game loot. Also, you have a QR code up in one of these corners. Check out Raid Shadow Legends. Thank you so much for sponsoring this video. You've been watching a lot of watch content. Play some video games. You deserve it.
Today's a really interesting episode. We're going to talk about the history of this phenomenal brand, a brand that I kind of didn't love when I first got into watches, but found out about, 6 months, 8 months in and loved. It's a brand that I've always really believed in, thought had great value. It's a watch that you just bought. You just bought one of these watches.
Signed, sealed, delivered.
And fucking sold it. Sold it. No,
signed, sealed, sent.
You returned it back.
Yes.
Within a day.
Oh yeah. Really within the hour. I just wasn't fast enough.
Yep. And so this is going to be a great episode with a long story about a brand, Michael's personal experience, and maybe with a future owner. Maybe this brand will be revived because at the moment it is functionally dead.
Let me just list you the quick sales pitch accolades, and that's not even all the accolades, just so we can get through those. This company has a watch that rivals both the Reverso and the Basculant.
JLC's Reverso and Cartier's Basculant. This very interesting articulating case, something that most brands would never even dare to do, right?
Exactly. When Patek Philippe was coming to the US, the person that was importing it brought one other brand.
Really?
And it was this brand. So there was Patek, and then when you walked into the shop, there was this brand right next to it.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that.
It has the exact same bezel, or some of the watches do, the exact same bezel as the Omega Speedmaster.
Yep.
The most famous chronograph relay of all time, next to the Daytona. In 1966, they had the thinnest watch in the world.
Yep.
Instead of having Paul Newman associated with their chronograph, they have a 1960s Finnish supermodel.
Super hot.
And their husband was also a race car driver.
Yeah. I much prefer the marketing campaigns where there's you want Leonardo DiCaprio? Well, here's his hot girlfriend. She's our...
The whole campaign around that, it wasn't really even a campaign. They never really marketed it.
Yeah.
Was that her husband was racing around the track.
And she
had this gorgeous chronograph. And she's relaxing, sitting back, timing him with a clipboard.
So much hotter.
Oh my God.
That's brilliant marketing.
This brand also has a watch designed by Gerald Genta, which is very famous.
A famous watch, yeah.
Yes. And then wrapping all of that, before the brand collapsed, they were really just on track to continuously be pushing the envelope. This is the brand I feel like that would be with Rolex and Omega, like I said, but would force them to continuously be like, oh, we got to stay on our toes.
Right.
Because these guys are going to take the dare in design.
Right.
Omega will take the dare in movement design. These guys are going to do something crazy on the dial.
Right.
That was their job. and then they collapsed. Crazy.
It's a disgrace.
Yeah. What brand is it?
It's Universal Genève.
It's Universal Genève.
Yeah. I just got back from Genève, so I feel very close with the brand.
Yeah.
No, not one of the first brands I fell in love with, but it was one of the first brands, along with Longines, that once I understood the brand, I was like, okay, I'm becoming a well-informed watch geek now.
Right.
I remember my first UG. I don't know if I have a photo of it. Actually, I'm sure I do on Instagram if you want to scroll back 10 years, 8 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, getting into the watch community, obviously there's Patek, AP, Rolex, clearly, Vacheron. But then you start to like, you feel like you're becoming a member of the club when you know the well-hidden gems.
Yes, exactly.
And Ben Clymer of Hodinkee was, shining some light on UG. He actually bought a famous UG at auction. But yeah, like when I first got mine, I was like, now I'm a member.
Yeah, right.
Now I'm a member of like the real watch community.
It's like anybody outside of the watch community is like, oh yeah, UG, they collapsed. And it's like, no. You don't know you don't know how crazy it is that they went down.
Yes.
Because they were up there with everybody.
Totally.
In 1925, they had the Auto Rem, this was the era when I feel like watch brands were basically all pocket watches. And they were like, okay, well, we'll just solder lugs onto pocket watches for a while. We don't know how popular these are going to be.
Right.
Obviously, then they became...
In retrospect, it's pretty cool, right? I mean, you look at that watch and you're like, oh, that's pretty beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's modified to go on your wrist, but it's still like, nah.
It's a pocket watch.
If you want us to clip the lugs off in a year, we'll do it like that. Then here's where we're talking about the Cartier Basculant and the JLC Reverso. This is their Cabriolet.
With, by the way... Do you realize what an 8-day power reserve is in the 1920s?
Yes.
Do we have any real understanding of how difficult that was? How rare it was?
8-day power reserve.
Cartier and JLC were not doing that. Cartier has such a small handful of 8 days to the point where I think, I don't want to make up a number here, but it's like 5.
I don't want to make up a number here, but I think it's 62,314.
Yeah. Like when I say 5, it's like, it's such a small number that it's unbelievably rare, and some people believe there are fakes out there.
Really?
But the fact that they were doing this shows like this was not a cheap watch manufacturer. This was not all show. This was truly a big dog.
I mean, that's what was so amazing to me reading about this. The guy that was bringing over Patek was also like, well, UG should come too.
Right.
That is, can you get a bigger nod than that?
No, it's amazing.
Exactly. So this is the Cabriolet. Gorgeous. The mechanism is definitely a lot more sophisticated than Cartier and JLC's. Maybe not in a good way in terms of reliability.
I don't know. I don't have any information about that. I just know how difficult it was to do that. I mean, still till today, I mean, you don't get manually wound watches that have 8-day power reserves. It's just not heard of.
Yeah,
it's too much power.
It's too much power. No one man should have all that power.
Right. That's what a lot of women say about me. It's just too much power.
I like him, but he has too much power.
Not one person has ever said that.
Pictures of the watch. It's absolutely gorgeous. Then we get...
I really thought... I thought the experience was going to be far more powerful. That's what I've heard more.
I thought...
He was weeping.
Before we even met, really. Then we get into, after, obviously, we're skipping a few decades here, but we get into, I feel like, the bread and butter of UG, which is their chronographs.
Chronographs, moon phases, all in similar design language, like this Aero Compacts you're showing here.
Yeah.
And this is the introduction that I got to the brand. This was the stuff that Ben Clymer was buying, that John Goldberger was buying. Stuff at the time like $5,000, $6,000, which was $5,000, $6,000 more than I had.
Exactly.
And they were wearing these watches, and they were like, these watches should be $20,000.
Yeah.
And now they are.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna kill myself.
There's a quote that says, "This brand sports watches from this final era were pure, unadulterated Universal Genève, and they're unlike anything else from other brands. For example, they are dropping a triple calendar with moon phase chronograph into a sports watch's body just because." And if that's not enough, which we'll get into later, Eric Clapton was wearing it, literally buying it the day or a year it came out.
It's amazing.
But if we're looking at this Aero Compacts, what is really cool is that it's a 3-register chronograph, obviously. But if you look at 12, there is another register, there's another something. And we talked about this, but what's interesting is you can time things with your watch. Of course, that's a chronograph. But what if you have a doctor's appointment at noon?
Right.
What do? Where do you write that down?
Right.
Here, that crown on the left side, you pop out, and it's not connected to the movement. It's not telling time. But you can set that small subdial to the time of an appointment or a meeting.
It's amazing. I love that.
That's incredible. I think that's not hysterical. It's incredibly useful. But now, like looking at it now, it's like, okay, you can set your one thing.
You set your one thing.
What is your one thing?
Totally.
Then we go to...
This stuff is nuts.
The Big Eye. Well, this is the Big Eye from Universal Genève. There is no exact production number on how many there are. Some people say very, very few. But more so, this is the Unicompacts line. So this is just a beautiful... There was a Big Eye age. I feel like Hoyer also did Big Eyes for a while. But these are just some incredibly beautiful Unicompacts from them.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Then we get to... when you're a chronograph brand, you obviously want to... do it for different reasons. So this is a pulsation dial compacts, the Compacts Medico.
Yeah, Medico.
Oh.
Medici.
Oh, Medici. I don't even know what that means.
Medici?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a famous Italian nobility family.
Okay, next up, the watch designed by Genta. You go off on this, King.
Yeah, man. This is one of my first favorite watches. I don't have one.
This is the watch.
The one I bought for myself, I gave to Anna.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
I could have just let her wear it, which may be what I was doing. I don't remember.
Either way, you don't have it.
Anyway, I don't have it.
Yeah.
And she's been meaning to send it in for service for about 2 years now, which is unbelievable. Anna has a beautiful Polerouter. I had my Datejust. And she didn't have like a truly great watch. She didn't have a watch. So I got this Polerouter and I said something to the effect of like, hey, you wear it. Or here's your gift. I really don't remember which one.
The second one is something I've never heard you say in your entire life.
Yeah, I know. But there's also, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
A little bit different. But anyway, this is one of the greatest designs of all time, I think. It's one of the most fascinating dress watches of the 20th century.
Yep.
It's bold. It comes in multiple dial configurations. But the Polerouter was designed by, I think, a 23-year-old Gerald Genta.
Yeah.
So before the Royal Oak, before the Nautilus, before the Ingenieur, all that stuff. And he was designing what was basically a dress watch. It wasn't oxymoronic, but with very different design language than we were used to seeing.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
The same way that he designed a sports watch with very different, right? He was basically trying to meld these worlds. In the 70s, it was sport and industrial design and wealth. At this time, it was kind of classic watchmaking with sport. It wasn't industrial, but there was a lot of sport going on there, right? Clearly something that we find on the Speedmaster, It was just a beautiful, beautiful watch. Often was topped with gilt dials, but the entire watch is just absolutely beautiful. I love it. It comes with a micro rotor movement, most often. Sometimes with a bumper movement, different generations. I have owned and sold, I don't know, dozens. I actually have one right now, but I think it's silver, not black. I may have a couple. I really don't even know. But I mean, in inventory.
Yeah, of course.
But they're beautiful, beautiful watches. Some of the best buys. You can still get them. Great examples. I would imagine, meaning in black, between $3,000 and $4,500, $3,400.
Okay.
Which is great. I mean, keep in mind, I used to buy them for $1,000 and sell them for $1,200.
Yeah, right.
So it's come a long way. But the truth is, I think even at $4,000, they still represent value.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but it really is true. I mean, where on the market are you going to find a watch of this caliber under $5,000?
Yeah.
You've got Universal Genève Polerouter, you've got Omega Constellations, those are on the same, kind of playing field.
Yeah.
You've got Piaget, but the problem with Piaget, even though I love the brand, is that it is decidedly dressy. I mean, it has a real...
It has a lot more flash to it than these. Right?
Exactly. So this is more mass market, and it's just absolutely stunning. So it's a phenomenal watch.
What's funny is that when you first got into these, and still now to a degree, if you're not in a circle of very well-informed watch people, this is still the watch that you have to explain why it's cool.
Yes.
And people still be like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's not a Datejust. And you're like, no, but listen to the history, listen to that.
Yes.
So that's fascinating. But what we also see here, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, no.
When we're looking at, after the Polerouter, when you're looking at the lugs of Universal Genève, and then you start to look at the bezel of their chronographs, you start to really see like, wow, this is strikingly similar to a Speedmaster.
Yeah.
With a lot of legacy. And what you're seeing really is a famous design trend from that era. And the Speedmaster is kind of the last surviving example of things like that, because the Daytona was decidedly different. But the Speedmaster became like, well, no, that's the bezel that was designed for the Speedmaster.
Right.
Those twisted lugs are because of the Speedmaster.
Right.
When it's like, well, no, really, that's from this era. The Speedmaster was just the iconic watch that stayed.
What year was the Polerouter?
1954.
Yeah, so significantly before the Speedmaster.
1957.
No, that's straight lugs.
Yeah.
57.
Oh,
we didn't introduce
you're
the
right.
twisted lugs until later.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so, wow.
Yeah.
That's that design predates.
So you're starting to see those little things come in, and that's when we get to a very special one later. You'll start to see like, wow, that is essentially a Speedmaster case, bezel, not dial, but the movement inside is the same as the Daytonas from that era.
And I didn't lay the foundation here. These watches were introduced by the brand to kind of in the same way that Rolex did the GMT with Pan Am. You know, the Polerouter was basically made in collaboration or made for Scandinavian airlines.
This is the one I take to fly to Taylor.
Exactly.
Yes,
and I have a
exactly.
dear friend that who has a phenomenal collection of watches now. Like phenomenal collection. And the Polerouter is probably still one of the watches that he holds closest to his heart. And at one point he had like at least 3 or 4. Maybe he has 1 or 2 now. But he remembered taking the pole route flight, the true pole route flight,
right?
And like standing up, you know, and everything. That's what you're supposed to do,
of course.
And that was, you know, significant. It was kind of not commemorating, but he associated with significant, you know, business deals, kind of, because that's when he would take the flight, you know. So the pole route was kind of like his "I built this company" watch, you know.
That's cool.
Now I think his "I built this company" watch is
like an AP concept.
Yeah, something
total loss of touch.
expensive.
Yeah. He doesn't even like it. Okay. Now,
Madonna! Wow.
Nina.
Wow.
Nina Rindt.
Look at her.
Rindt.
Who cares?
Dude, she's like 90
She's
now.
stunning. I would buy her. I would take her out right now.
Nina was the wife of race car driver Jacques
I don't know.
Rindt. You just called me unclassy, and you can't read a single name on this page.
Yeah, Jacques. I don't know.
Anyways, a friend of Jackie Stewart and the only driver to ever posthumously win the Formula One World Drivers. Posthumously.
After his death.
Give me 2 years. Your net worth is going to be this big compared to mine. 2 years. That's it. Mark my words. I'll call you to ask me to sound out. If there's 12 zeros, what number is that? Okay, they were the only ones to
Formula One.
Great. After a fatal crash prior to the 1970 Italian Grand
Prix.
This is Nina Christian Likey.
Oh my God.
She wears this watch in an absolutely massive bun strap.
Stunning.
Which is crazy. This is really, especially this picture that you're seeing right now, that is essentially a white dial Speedmaster.
Things are moved a little bit, Speedmaster. Yeah, basically. It's stunning. What a great looking watch.
Well, it's one of the most beautiful chronographs.
Great bracelet, everything. And they get even better.
Yes, they do.
Oh my God.
First off, before we get to there, we have the Nina.
Yep.
But we also have
the Pinta, the Santa Maria. Come on.
Yeah.
No, someone's got that.
No, well, that reminds me of being in elementary school, but I didn't sing.
No, it's from Step Brothers.
Is it from Step Brothers, or is Step Brothers referencing elementary school?
Yeah, but the way that I sang it, it was like the way I sang it.
Okay. So this is the Nina, white dial, and then we have the evil Nina, black dial. Beautiful.
Which is weird, but
which is not timely.
But the exotic is where it's at.
The exotic is an insane looking wristwatch.
It's insane.
These are hard to get watches in general, but the exotic is even harder to get. But wow, what an incredible watch.
Stunning watch.
Imagine them being alive today and having this history.
Insane.
Universal Jeanette being like, well, yeah, we could reissue the exotic if you want. That's crazy.
It's amazing.
It is essentially a Speedmaster case, and this is 37 millimeters.
It's crazy.
That is the dream reduced that they could ever get because it didn't exist. Then, of course, we have Eric Clapton's watch, which they say he bought basically the first year it came out.
Yep.
Exactly. Immediately when it came out.
It's kind of got a big eye thing going. This top sub dial is even larger. It's just stunning.
And it's also a moon phase in the top dial. Absolutely insane watch. And it just shows you like what really could have been.
Totally.
Then we have some watches that I found on Chrono. This is how I got into the brand. That are just incredible deals.
Yep.
And then obviously we have the one that I purchased.
Yes.
Here's the thing. I purchased it. It got to me. I opened it. Immediately I was like, and you know I'm going to because I asked you too.
Yeah.
Is the polishing.
It was the polishing. So, you know, when there are certain watch designs, polishing generally is bad, right? I mean, you can polish a watch. I polished my GMT and it came out better. No problem there.
Of course.
But polishing is a dangerous game because it's you know, you can lose your original case finishing very easily.
Yep.
And you can ultimately kind of lose all the original lines, which is the worst case scenario. Exactly. Michael ultimately owned what was probably a 7 out of 10, and he wanted a 9 or a 10 out of 10.
Yep.
If I saw that watch on the wrist of somebody, a friend, or if my buddy wanted to buy the watch, I would tell him it's a great watch. Yes, it's polished, but it's a great watch. I recommend it. Watches get a lot worse. This is a solid 7, and frankly, that's not that. It's not bad.
Truly.
But you had a higher standard, and you wanted a better example, and you got rid of it.
I got rid of it. But it was a beautiful watch.
Son of a bitch.
I can't believe I did, because I was wearing it and I was trying to be excited about it. And I was
know. I was just excited that you got into gold. But now you have a gold Vacheron, and maybe you'll wear that. Maybe you'll sell that.
That's a bit. I'm probably gonna sell it if you want.
Gonna sell it. It's unbelievable.
It's just I get these watches and I'm like, that was supposed to fill a hole that I was feeling. And it didn't. That's weird. It's probably because I actually wanted this watch.
Yeah.
So then I should probably sell that one again. I'm like, weird. I almost had it closed.
Ugh.
But no, I sent it back. It was an amazing chronograph, but over-polished.
Yes. If you love watches like I do, if you think that they mean something more than the time, then head on over to theoandharris.com and shop our selection of vintage watches and handmade straps. They're unique and they're special, and once they're gone for good.
The tragic ending, which is we'll swing it over to you because you've talked to people in the industry about this a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of brands, and UG being one of them, shuttered, in the second half of the 20th century, quartz crisis, things around that. I mean,
this was the saddest part, which I'll quickly interrupt you and get back to it, but UG went down because of the quartz crisis, because their idea was, this is it. This is it. Everybody's going quartz. Mechanical watchmaking is done. Let's appeal to people that want quartz watches in Asian markets. Yeah. We're not going to do what we have been doing because that era is over.
They pivoted. God knows what happened, how they got to that conclusion, but they did.
Yep.
And they ruined the company, and that's it. I mean, now you can still buy Universal Genève watches that are a shell of
it's a
what
mall
they
watch.
once were.
It's a bit more expensive.
And ultimately, so the name is being used, but the question becomes, well, I don't believe that, or I guess market research would have to determine if the retail success or the retail situation of Universal Genève watches, wherever they are being sold,
as in this brand that has the name,
if it is in any way tied to the brand name. If there's any brand equity there, because if there's not, then they could just continue selling these watches under a different name and remain very profitable, and they could sell off this asset, meaning the Universal Genève name, to someone that wants to revive it and probably sell it off for quite a bit of money. I've heard many times that there are buyers out there in the world looking to pay significant amounts of money for the Universal Genève name, which is interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, those same people could make the same watches they want to make and do phenomenal things, but they want to do it under Universal Genève name. They want to say they own the brand. They want to bring it back, and they want it to be hot, and of course make a ton of money. But you
buy the name and you're like, okay, we'll release a Polerouter variant in the Nina.
Yep.
What?
Done.
That's great.
It's
obviously
insane.
The tough part is, what movements do you use and stuff like this?
They would figure it out, and they've got so much
marketing.
marketing power that it would be big.
This would be huge.
Yeah, and a lot of the medium brands, sub 5,000 brands, as far as the Polerouter, and then sub 10 probably on the Nina, or sub 12. Maybe the Nina is 15. Who knows?
Yeah.
That's still going to eat up market share. People that will. Not in the world, but in a lot of major markets, it will give like Omega a run for their money if they were to do it. It would, it'd be wild.
Yeah. If a 37, they just reintroduced this Nina. With the twisted lugs, the Speedmaster dial.
I mean, even they did it at 38, 39, make it a little bit more modern.
Even they did 42.
Speedmaster's 42, exactly, right.
Where are you going to get your white dial Speedy?
Exactly, plus it's kind of an in the know brand, It would be really interesting. And they get distribution, it would be wild. So who knows? At some point, it probably will happen. At least I would think so. But maybe the owners of the brand are just being stubborn and they just don't want to move with their asset, and that's it. Maybe it'll never change.
Yeah.
Only time will tell.
Oh, shop watches.
That's it. Shop watches, Theo and Harris Watch Shop.